Welcome along to the Irish NFL show. Well, the week 15 Sunday evening or Sunday late Sunday 9 o'clock slot has just wrapped up, and you're listening to a very despondent Packers fan here as the Broncos took care of business in Mile High. Some really interesting, exciting action. Huge moment for Charlie Smyth getting his first walk-off field goal, so to speak. It just gets better and better for Charlie Smyth. But let's start off with that Packers game. Kieran, I don't know. I'm joined by Kieran Boyle here. I'm still kind of stuttering after seeing that loss. Call it a game of two halves, call it Jekyll and Hyde performance, or just call it the cruelty of sport, because in the first half, the Packers seem to have found a template for beating this Broncos defense by, getting the ball out fast, getting the run game going with Josh Jacobs. It all seemed to be going well. And then in a cruel moment in the third quarter, Pat Surtain picks off Jordan Love. Not Cortland Sutton. Christian Watson goes down with a chest injury on the next drive or next play, even or next couple of plays. They lose Micah Parsons, their talisman, and it just all fell apart for the Packers from there. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, a horrible day for injuries across the league, but especially in this game. I mean, it was one of those. It was going to be a close game. We knew that. Two great offenses, two great defenses. I mean, and it just started off both teams just trading blow for blow. I mean, Jacobs had the touchdown, and then Cortland Sutton and the kid Bandy had another touchdown. And both teams and both offenses were clicking, and it looked like it was going to be a real back and forth, which is what it pretty much turned out to be in the end. But yeah, like you said, I mean, you lose Watson to an injury. Probably your number one target and your main wide receiver on offense. And then when you lose somebody like Micah Parsons, now you're running against the wind the whole time after that. And the Packers, to their credit, they stayed in it, and they didn't capitulate despite this Broncos defense, which is just relentless. I mean, we talk about it week on week. I mean, they're just number one in every stat on the defense and tackling and in coverage and all those different stats. And it just turned out to be, they were just too strong in the end. I mean, but from Surtain to the front four, and it was just too much. I mean, you saw Love sacked a couple of times towards the end as well. It just got too much for the Packers. It's probably, indicative of where the Broncos are now, where they just kind of, club you to death with that defense. And what I will say is that Nick's had a decent output tonight, 4 touchdowns, which is not something that he typically does. But we knew it was going to be a close game. Both teams just trading blows at all instances during the game. Love it at those two costly interceptions, obviously, which were, I don't want to say difference makers, but they did have an impact on the final score. But Broncos just do what Broncos do, and they just bludgeon you, and they keep coming with that defense. They are absolutely relentless, and unfortunately for the Packers, they just ran out of steam, notwithstanding those 2 injuries, but just ran out of steam towards the end.
Yeah, you mentioned those 2 costly picks, and it just seemed after those pivotal moments, the dam just started to creak, and once it burst, no better team than that Denver pass rush to finish the job and just get home. They gave Jordan Love absolutely no opportunity to go down and get a game tying drive in the end. I guess there's been some conversation even in our WhatsApp group about the Broncos and whether they're for real. I mean, or whether they're over reliant on that defense. But as you said, Bo Nix had a great night tonight. He threw over 300 yards. It just seemed like he was able to move the ball. Whether that's indicative of a maybe a poorly performing Packers secondary. But he was able to find his guys. He was able to find Sutton, Franklin, you mentioned Bandy, and they were able to just pick up big chunk plays whenever they needed them. Can we start to think now that this Broncos team is for real and they genuinely can make a push towards the Super Bowl?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Nix plays behind arguably one of the best lines in the league. And yeah, he hasn't lit up the league and he hasn't put up a huge amount of points. But I mean, when they needed him today, I mean, they had to, stand toe to toe with Jordan Love and the rest of the offensive weapons that the Packers have. And he was able to do it. I mean, he hasn't really, Sutton in the last couple of seasons has been a good weapon, but he hasn't really found Sutton at all consistently this season. And he did today. But he was able to find the rest of his wide receivers too. He was spreading it out to 5 or 6 different players, from Mims, to Franklin. He was finding all the weapons that he has. But yeah, I mean, this Broncos team, I would not be surprised if they went deep in the playoffs. I mean, the defense is stacked. We know that. And when you got playmakers on defense who can turn the game, they can turn the game around, then you've always got a chance. I mean, they're not always going to light up the scoreboard, but they do just what they need to do to win games, and that's another W for them now. I mean, it's a relentless drive that they have right now, and they've just been marching through the teams in the league, and they put away a very talented Packers team, albeit with those 2 major injuries, but they needed a win and they got the win. And Nick's had a very, very productive outing on offense, which is not something that you can say a lot. But yeah, I absolutely think they can go far in the playoffs.
It's funny how things can change so quickly, because with the Patriots losing to the Bills, and we'll get to that in a second, the Broncos have really solidified that number 1 seed. And you talk about things changing quickly. The Packers fans and including myself, would have come in tonight thinking a win would have really spurred on their hopes of chasing that number 1 seed. And now you're really looking at making a push at best for the NFC North and even making the playoffs. And I think the Rams actually did the Packers a favor tonight in beating the Lions in a cracker of a game, 41-34. Early doors, it was the Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown show. Stafford putting up 368 yards again, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Jared Goff did his bit, 338 yards. It was just it was nip-tuck all the way, and better team came out at the end. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, I mean, and this was we were all talking about this would be a dream NFC Championship game, or at least a really solid divisional game, in the playoffs. But as we expected, both teams are loaded on offense. If you put the teams side by side, the Rams would probably come out a little bit on top, just based on the offensive weapons they have with Puka. I mean, both, but it was like a slugfest at the start. Both wide receivers are going at it. Puka ends up with 181 yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown ends up with 163. Touchdowns all over the place. Puka was great. So was St. Brown, Jameson Williams. But my fear for the Lions in this game was the secondary that was beat up, and that the Rams were just targeting them with those wide receivers. I mean, they were out Kirby Joseph, they were out Thomas Harper, and they were out Brian Branch, and that's a huge chunk of change to be missing from the secondary. So the Lions were always kind of running up against the wind with those guys being out. But both teams loaded on offense, and they were trading blows, and it just the Rams just had too much in the end. I mean, the big plays that exposed that secondary. I mean, you got there's probably about 3 or 4 different tight ends on that team, and they bring Parkinson in. He had 2 touchdowns, really big difference maker in that game. But the Rams just had too much in the end for a Lions team who were, probably, I said earlier in the chat group that the Lions would have to put up 45 to win this game. They didn't. They almost did. But the Rams just came out on top. 2 touchdowns for Stafford. And he just sprayed the ball all around to his players. And, I always say too, when Kyron Williams is either 100 or close to 100 yards, then the Rams win. But now there's Blake Corum, who's now the last couple of weeks just starting to find his form and starting to be a big addition to that Rams running game too. So now they got that 2-headed monster on top of the weapons that they have on offense. We'll see what happens with Devontae Adams, the hamstring injury. We'll see how serious that is. But that's just indicative of a pretty bleak day for injuries across the league. So hopefully he's okay, because he's a big part of that Rams offense as well.
Yeah, and it's just the last thing you want to see happening in the last, down the stretch coming into crunch time in the league. We talk about the Rams, but the other teams in their division, the Seahawks and the 49ers did the job as well. So I mean, they're certainly not home and hosed within the division, or nor do they have that number 1 seed clinched. But the big talking point this week was the old man coming back, Phillip Rivers. 1,800 days since his last NFL game. The big question was, would he be able to protect himself, or would they be able to protect him against this vaunted Seattle Seahawks defense? Okay, look, Rivers didn't light it up on the stat sheet. He threw for 120 yards and a touchdown and a pick, but he certainly did not look out of place. At one point, he completed 6 passes in a row. How impressed were you by Rivers' return?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you don't want him to do is embarrass himself and just, throw pick after pick because he's been out of the league so much. I had doubts that he'd be able to be standing up after the first quarter because of the Seahawks defense that we've seen all year. And the other thing is, I mean, I watched the Colts, fold like a paper bag last week in Jacksonville, and this is the last thing I thought was going to happen. Colts looked lifeless and without any sort of direction or motivation to play last week. And then they come out today in a hostile environment in Seattle and put it up to the Seahawks. And I was very surprised.
Not necessarily the high flying Seahawks that we've become accustomed to seeing this season, but at the same time, how important is it to get these workman-like wins, and for even the likes of Sam Darnold to come out on the right side of one of these wins where they were stuttering and where they weren't really getting it going, just to have that, and we talk about it so much, muscle memory, just to have that in the bank, a hard-fought win coming down the stretch as well to keep the pressure on the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, it is important. But Smyth and Jigba had 113 yards, but these are the games that people question Darnold's, his pedigree and his ability to win the big one. I mean, he has sprayed it out to Smyth and Jigba a hell of a lot this season. The run game today was absent. I mean, Charbonnet only had 31 on 8 carries, which is, that's not the output that you're going to need to win a game. But it'll definitely kind of perk up the Darnold Boo Boys, because there's a large percentage of people out there who don't think that he's going to be enough to get this Seahawks team to where they need to be. 6 field goals, that's not what anybody would have thought. I mean, everyone thought the Seahawks would win, but I mean, not with 6 field goals and with the performance that the Colts put up. I mean, credit to Rivers. It can't be easy going back into the league after 5 years being out, and being able to withstand some of the hits that he could have been taking out there. I mean, his O-line did a hell of a job protecting him, because I had serious concerns about his health going out. After being out for 5 years, going up against some of those monsters, especially that front four for Seattle. But very un-Seattle-like performance. Darnold's going to have to pick it up, because there was just no flow to that game, no consistency from them. We're not able to convert key downs, and get the ball in the runner's hands enough to put any dent in that Colts defense. But again, like you said, they come out on top. They do what winners do. They had to get the win, and they got it.
Just like the 49ers putting up 37 points to beat the Tennessee Titans, 37-24. Again, keeping pace with that division. Within that division, you have to credit the 49ers and their resilience, and guys getting healthy at the right time. Kittle was on form tonight. Purdy was on form. We'll get to that a bit more tomorrow night, but we got to mention Charlie Smyth. Look, the Saints have nothing to play for. Saints fans might even be cursing the fact that they're now winning games at a time when they have nothing to play for, and they just seem to be losing draft positions. But for Charlie Smyth, this last couple of weeks has been monumental, hasn't it? Because we saw the high standards or the cruel nature of this game and the kicking position with Jude McAtominay, and finding himself out in the cold very, very quickly. But Charlie Smyth has got off to a flyer, and he's proved that he can play with the big boys here.
Oh, absolutely. And they were showing clips in that game of pregame and some of the cannons he was letting off. That's the thing when you're a kicker. You're only as good as your last kick, and you've got to get out there and you've got to make the plays and give him credit. He probably could have launched it from 60 yards. The Saints try to eat up a couple of yards and get him a little bit closer. Hell of a performance, and he got them to win. I mean, the Saints, listen, it's hard to win in the league, and it's not a league, or it's not a sport where you can tank like other sports for draft picks. I mean, the Saints won't care about how they won the game. They just want to win the game. It's a divisional game. They put a huge dent in the Panthers' ambitions. The Panthers struggled against them about 5 or 6 weeks ago. They lost to them as well. So the Saints sweep that series. And they're not going to care about who's coming out in the draft. They just want to get that win, and they want to have fans go home happy, because they're going to have seats they're going to want to fill in the coming weeks, and try and sell the last couple of games of the season. So a win is a win, and it's a great performance from Smyth. I mean, that kick was right down the middle. There was no doubt about it. and it further cements his status as a reliable kicker in the league, whether he stays with the Saints or whether somebody else picks him up in the off season. But he's in the shop window right now, and every chance he gets, he's taking. So credit to him.
That's exactly it. I mean, there's only a few weeks left in the season. As we said, they've got nothing to play for, but every week is an audition for him. Every time he gets a chance to get out in the field and kick a field goal, it's an audition. And the more reliable he proves himself to be, the more likely it is that we'll see him again next season, whether that be with the Saints or with another team. Looking at the early windows, I think the biggest talking point, Kieran, is the fact that we're going to see the playoffs once again without Joe Burrow. And for the first time since 2014, we're going to see the playoffs without Kansas City Chiefs, and that means no Patrick Mahomes, who, even if they had made the playoffs, we would not be seeing, because he left with a torn ACL, I think. So really, really despondent looking Pat Mahomes, finishing up his season as the Chiefs went down to the Chargers. Now, on the Chargers side of things, I've been banging the Chargers drum all season. But I did not give them a hope of winning this game. I just thought they were fit to burst with all their injuries, and they struggled to a win against the Eagles last Monday night. I did not see a way for them, and I just thought that the Chiefs would find a way tonight. But maybe that's indicative of just the fact that the Chiefs have not been themselves all season long. Is it a case that maybe Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs need a bit of an off season to reset and to get themselves back to the bottom of the mountain again, is where they'll have to start, but just to get themselves reset again.
Yeah, well, I mean, we thought after the Super Bowl, I mean, when we were out there, we were covering the press conferences afterwards, and the Chiefs players were dejected, but just talking about coming back strong for 25, especially Mahomes. But it just never got going this year. I mean, the close games that they won last year, they were losing this year, and whatever pedigree, whatever key kind of components that they were trying to find, they just weren't able to get it this year. And it's probably, I don't want to say an injury is a good thing, but I mean, it's probably good timing if he's going to have a knee injury, because we're in December. You got to give it 7-8 months, maybe 9 months for a rehab. So Mahomes should be back for the start of the 26th season. Who's going to join him? That's a great question, because we don't know what Kelsey's plans are. He's still capable of playing tight end of the league, but they're going to have to add a lot of weapons for Mahomes, because the run game just wasn't there this year. The wide receivers, there's just inconsistency across the place. I mean, obviously Rice missed a huge chunk of the first couple of months, or at least the first month. Hollywood Brown is injured today. So he didn't have the weapons that he's usually been used to the last couple of years. But it just never got going for the Chiefs this year. But like I thought the Chiefs were going to win this. I thought the Chargers were flattering to deceive a lot of people, but I will give them credit. They went to a hostile environment. They went to a really cold place where they're not typically used to playing. And through a battle of attrition, really. I mean, it's not like Herbert lit it up. He went 19 of 29 for 210, a touchdown and an interception with 4 sacks along the way. So it's not like he lit it up. But, kind of like they did against the Eagles, they did just enough, and the defense just kicked in and saved them a bunch of times. I mean, that was just indicative of the last drive where Gardner Minshew was picked off by Derwin James, and that was just Minshew trying to force a pass into to Kelsey that just wasn't there at all. But
when you look at Joe Burrow, and just flipping to the Bengals, we won't keep ourselves awake too long, but or too long more, should I say? When you look at Joe Burrow, 24-0 tonight. I mean, Joe Burrow was quite despondent in his press conferences during the week as it stood. He talked about whether he'd want to continue playing the game if it's not fun. He certainly didn't have fun out there tonight. He'd no touchdowns, 2 picks, just did not look himself. And the Bengals just continue to frustrate, and it's going to be another off season of questions for Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Yeah, huge problems for the Bengals across the board. Obviously, the O-line has not been up to par. The defense is one of, if not the worst in the league. They haven't had much of a run game. I mean, Brown only had 53 on the ground. Jamar Chase had a nice outfit with 132 yards, but it just, when you're playing from behind yet again, it just wears on you. And Burrow is, I mean, I say before, he's an Ohio kid. He loves playing there. But it gets to the stage where, and I'm not going to speculate that he's going to retire. Andrew Luck retired the same age. but that's a unique situation. But it's going to get to the stage where if he gives it one more year, he's going to have to demand, listen, I'm the franchise quarterback. I need an O-line that's going to keep me upright. I'm going to need a defense that's not going to capitulate every single game. I'm going to need a better run game. And, if we have to lose, I don't know what they're planning on doing with the wide receivers, or I can't remember who's tied up with contracts right now, but they need help across the board. And this is the third straight season that they've scrambled. They've almost made the playoffs the last two, eliminated today. But it's another lost season for Burrow. He wants to see how he can do himself with a season where he's not injured or where he's not, spending half the season watching from the sideline. So it's very interesting to look into his mindset and where he thinks it's going to go, because the league wants to see him. Everybody wants to see him productive, and he's an exciting, dynamic player. And people don't want to see him spend half, if not more, of the season on the sidelines. They want Joe Burrow out there, and the Bengals are going to have to either pony up or give him a huge amount of help. So we'll see what happens there.
We won't see Patrick Mahomes, we won't see Joe Burrow, but we will see Drake May and Josh Allen, and they served up an absolute cracker in the early window. Buffalo Bills winning out 35-31. They were down 21-0 at one point, and they went on 5 straight touchdown drives, winning out 35-31. It was a classic from the off. Cook for the Bills, it wasn't necessarily just the Josh Allen show. Cook went for 22 carries for 107 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 receiving on top of that. But Josh Allen, nobody puts the team on their back like Josh Allen, and he did just that. Late into the first half and into the second half, he was absolutely spectacular once again. Just cementing his legacy as just a clutch quarterback. But Drake May, you have to give him credit. He played his part. This was an absolute it was a classic. And I'd sum up May's performance as well, where he went 50 yards, he ran down the field and provided the lead block for Travion Henderson on his second long touchdown of the day. It puts, I still think the Patriots are they're too far ahead in that division, but it solidifies the Bills as a playoff team and a serious playoff contender, and when we mentioned the big guys, the big guns that are going to be out, who's going to want to play the Bills in the playoffs, Kieran?
Well, that's it. I mean, and we always say that December is the month where Josh Allen cooks, and he's just so reliable this time of year. When the weather gets cold, he's just able to dial it up. He was great tonight, just same as May was. Allen throws for 3 touchdowns. James Cook has 2 on the ground. It was the game that we expected. Two offenses who know how to run the ball really, really well, which is what we saw. Cook at 107 on the ground, and Henderson at 148 as well. So it's what we expected. Cold weather, not going to be throwing the ball around all that much, and that's really what happened. Great to see these two quarterbacks just going at it, and hopefully it's going to be that case for a long time to come. Bills now 10-4, Patriots fall to 11-3. So that's, the division is still alive for the Bills. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to make it up, but still it's going to make for an exciting couple of weeks. But it was the performance we expected from both quarterbacks and both sets of players. Really cool to see, not just the offensive players, but the defense just kicking it into. Question marks I still have about this Bills run defense, which they didn't really answer tonight because Henderson ran up and down them. But again, when you're putting up 35 points, you always have a great chance of winning the game. And it was just that Joey Bosa, big stop on 4th and 5 that just cemented it for the Bills. And they just came out in a close contest. It could have gone either way. So we'll see both teams in January, and let's see when they both meet again.
Finally, a quick word on Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're heating up at the right time as well. Lawrence 20 for 32, 330 yards, 5 touchdowns through the air, and 51 rush yards on top of that with a touchdown to boot. So he accounted for 6 touchdowns tonight. Travis Etienne with 3 receiving. Etienne, Myers, and BTJ are heating up at the right time as well. Is Trevor Lawrence doing enough to start to silence a few of the critics? Are the Jags a team that might be reckoned with in the playoffs as well?
Well, there's nothing wrong with what the Jags are doing right now. I mean, they're taking care of business. They're putting up big offensive numbers. They're putting teams away early, which is something that they've struggled with in the recent past. I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit and not get too carried away from this, because the last 4 games they beat the Cards, the Titans, the Jets, and the Colts. So I'm not going to get too wound up on that kind of easy stretch of the schedule that they've had. But again, they've beaten well, apart from the Cards game, but they've beaten the teams that they need to beat. And they're playing good football right now. The defense is humming. They're making key plays on defense, and Lawrence he's not doing what Lawrence usually does. He's not turning the ball over. He's not fumbling it. He's throwing it to ETN even, and he's got BTJ back, which is a huge addition. But it's solid football all around. Cohen's got something cooking in Duval. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a deep run in the playoffs. However, I just think that I don't want people getting too carried away with a easy-ish slate of games that they've had. I want to see what they can do up against some of the bigger dogs in the league. If they ever get as far as playing the Bills or the Pats or the Broncos or any of the big dogs in the AFC. So I'm cautiously optimistic about where they are. But again, all they can do is win the games that's in front of them, and they're doing those pretty handily and putting the games away early and often. Let's see how it works out for them. I mean, the Texans are kind of biting at their heels. Unfortunately, it'd be great if they had a game or two left against the Texans, but they've already played each other, so we're not going to get that spectacle. But yeah, I mean, I'd expect them to win the division, but there's much bigger challenges coming down the line for the Jags. But good confidence building stuff, and they just keep stacking up the W's, and that's all you can do right now.
Yeah, Christmas is coming, and indeed we'll find out what a lot of these teams are made of over the course of the coming weeks. We'll be back tomorrow night with more in-depth analysis of Sunday's games, and indeed in tonight's game between the Cowboys and the Vikings. Stay tuned on the Irish NFL Show.